Let me tell you a story. The story of a storyteller. A woman who, since she was a very small human, has been telling stories in every way she could. She told stories by herself, while playing in a field with a bandana tied under her chin. She told stories from a dress-up box, making sure each character had a signature look. She told stories late at night to siblings and friends by candle or flashlight. She told stories through songs and then through characters on a stage. But all the while, she was writing them too. Her favorite stories were the ones that lived in her head, full of strong, daring girls who did brave and magical things. Girls with clever minds and so much love to give. She liked to read those stories too. She read tales of girls who wrote novels and solved crime. Girls who traversed the universe through wrinkles in time. Girls who loved to dress up but knew their way around a sword. Girls who defeated and sometimes fell in love with blood-sucking monsters. Even stories of boys digging holes or fighting dragons for their hoard. And all the while, late at night, she dreamed of the day when some girl would read her stories and maybe see themselves reflected in the mirror of those pages. It took her a long time to finally stop trying to live other people's dreams for her. And so she set out to do what she'd always dreamed of doing. She wrote a book. And she had never been more proud of herself. But there are some monsters and creatures in real life that feel unconquerable. No matter how strong and daring a heroine might be, they come in all shapes and sizes, and some, the worst of them all, are invisible ones that live only in the mind. And sometimes those monsters drive the heroine far, far away, till she finds herself alone and very unbrave. Because when you are so used to living other people's dreams, it feels like betrayal to start to live your own. Instead of becoming the hero of her own story, she felt like the villain in everyone else's. And after all that hard work to break free and stand her own ground, she started to forget who she was. She journeyed deeper into the woods, where she could hide away. And eventually, she didn't just stop chasing her own dreams, she forgot how to dream altogether. Our storyteller found her way back home. But did she really come back? No, not really. Because something inside her had dimmed so low a whisper could have snuffed it out completely. So she spent 2 years pretending she hadn't changed, and even in this she was telling stories. But these were not the kind filled with courage and hope. There was no love or magic in these tales she told. There was anger and rage and fury and bitterness. With a heart full of rot and ruin and a fake smile plastered on her face, she existed, but she didn't live. And then came the year of tragedy. Now, if I were to tell you all the horrible and heartbreaking things our storyteller lived through in the span of 1 year, you would accuse me of telling a tall tale. And I wouldn't blame you. It was a year of disappointment, destruction, despair, and death. It was a year marked by sorrow and grief. It was a year that felt like a cosmic curse, like she had angered God himself and retribution was endless. Rock bottom isn't always finding yourself in some sort of dangerous or seemingly impossible scenario. Sometimes it's more like finding the bottom of a dry well, empty and dark and so very, very lonely. And our storyteller found herself there. Nowhere to go, no hope left in her soul. And finally here, she did what she'd been afraid to do all along. She told her story. A story is only good if it tells the truth. And all good stories are true. And I think that's why it can be so hard to find a truly good story. Because we're all so afraid to tell the truth. We're so sure that what makes our stories good is the bright, brilliant, happy plots that make us look like we've figured it all out. But who among us has ever been moved by a character whose story is neat and tidy and pristine? No, we fall for the fallen and the broken. The ones who aren't sure that they can get back up again. The ones with everything stacked against them. The ones who are brave enough to accept the truth of their reality and fight to tell a new, better story. And the magic of storytelling is that when we tell the truth, that new hope, that light at the end of the tunnel, that tide that turns the battle, that better story becomes easier to see. The clarity comes when we tell the truth, even if we're the only ones who can see it. Because often, we're the only ones who need to see it. And so our storyteller told her truth. Through tears and snot, covered in grief and despair, she found herself in a sunny room as a confessional, the warm hands and arms of a best friend as priest. And as all good stories go, once she was done and her tears had dried, a vision of a better future came into view. A future she'd always longed for. One full of magic and hope and poetry and joy and laughter and tears. One where sorrow was allowed to visit but never move in. Where anger was seen for what it really is, grief. A future where those things were old friends who helped point her back to love. Things that kept her soft-hearted and tender. It was a future filled with art, with stories read and stories told. With painting and making and playing dress up, with learning and growing and trying to love her God and the people he created more each day. With being unashamedly, insufferably herself. It was a clarity that reminded her that there wasn't just a lot of stories to tell, but even more to live. And it reminded her how desperately this world needs storytellers. People who live and tell tales about ordinary folk who are strong and daring and clever and full of love, who wouldn't sit by in the face of injustice and crime, who explore the universe for the truths it holds, who play and find joy because dressing up is fun, but they are always willing to fight for their fellow human. Who can carry the nuance of loving a blood-sucking monster and refusing to watch them claim another life. Who will dig up truth and conquer dragons who hoard resources. People who let their lives and their stories be mirrors that help others say, I can do that too.
So hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm a storyteller. And you found yourself at the very beginning of a brand new story that I'm telling, and it's my story. And it's gonna be full of a lot of different things, from making clothes to weird art and exploring faith, and I'm sure things I haven't even thought of yet, but definitely exploring writing the stories that live in my head and working really hard to get them into the hands of the people who need to read them. This is gonna be the story of how I create a life that is honest and gentle and magical and beautiful, and how that might be the most holy and radical thing that anyone could choose to do. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you stick around for the rest of it.